Welcome back to another video, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be testing and reviewing this knife. This is the top Scandi Trekker and it retails for about $90. Now, this knife comes with the knife itself and the sheath. In terms of the sheath, I have no problems with it. It's very good, has a nice welt right there. Good stitching all around, and it's good knife retention. Obviously, if you do, shake it hard enough, it will fall out, but that's not much of a problem because when walking around, it's not going to be shaking around that much. Now, taking the knife out, looking at the blade, you can tell it is a modified Scandi, meaning that you have your Scandi edge right there, then you have a secondary bevel, which doesn't give you as much, cutting power, but it gives you more control, which I personally like in my opinion. The blade length is 3.5 inches, and the blade thickness is 1/8 of an inch. The handle is made out of green Marcata handle scales with white liners. See if we can get this. White liners right there. It is full tang, meaning the blade seal runs all the way to the end. And overall, in terms of the handle comfortableness, I personally like it. It's very comfortable. One thing I do have to mention is taking the knife in and out of the sheath a bunch of times, the black from the sheath bleeds into the knife handle a bit right there, but that's just a minor issue. Without further ado, let's take it out to the testing field and do a few tests.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the BBC or our testing zone. Sammy, come here, come on. All right, good boy. We've got Doggo, as you can see. We had to take him for a walk, so. But we're gonna test a knife. The first test I think we're gonna do is batoning. No, Sam. Yeah. The first test we're going to do is batoning. Sammy's trying to steal my wood right now. You know what? Let's give him this piece. I've went ahead and chopped up these few pieces, and let's just really test this knife out and try to split it. So, a few things I forgot to mention earlier is that the knife is 1095 high carbon steel, so you will have to oil it. And it does have a lanyard hole, another thing I forgot to mention. And the sheath has a belt loop. Besides that, I think I hit all the points. So here it is. And the first test we're gonna do is just straight batoning. All right, now this is thick wood. Probably too thick for this knife, but we're gonna do it anyway. This thing splits like a dream. I mean, I have been using this knife for a few weeks now, and I've overall just really enjoyed it. We're gonna keep splitting this wood. Really test this knife out. And another thing that my bushcraft knives that I like to have, that I want them to be able to do is make a fire. So what we're gonna do is make a fire with this knife. And since I don't have my good ferro rod, we're really gonna have to make some good tinder for this fire, so it'll be also a good test. Okay, guys, so we have our wood pile, and the next thing we're gonna do is try a few feather sticks. Excuse me there. But just clean up this piece of wood before we do it. Okay, so we got our wood. Let's try a few feather sticks. Okay, so this is the first feather stick we got right here. As you may be able to see, it's just very, very fine feathers. Let's make a few more of these, and then I think we can get a fire going. Okay, before we get this fire going, we need to get some more firewood. So we got a piece of really dry, hard wood right here, and we're gonna try to straight baton through this. This is gonna test the edge retention. It's also just gonna keep testing that strength. So we're just gonna baton right through it. It's getting some nice bite right there. Just got this piece of wood. This looks like a good piece of wood. Now we're just gonna baton this thing down. Strike iron piece of wood. This will do really well for fire. Oh, hi, Doggo. Just split this down a few more times. Oh. Okay, guys, we have all the kindling we need. The next thing we need to do is go gather some birch bark so we can start this fire. Okay, guys, so we have all our materials, and before we do this conclusion with the knife, we have to see if it can make fire. Feather sticking does great with our just like general kindling and splitting. Now, I do have a tiny ferro rod. This thing's small, so I had to get really fine birch bark, and I scraped it just with like the edge of my knife right there. And I also have this cedar bark, but this little puppy over here knocked it off the thing. Sammy. Okay. So let's just try to light this. Okay, guys. So as you can see, this knife can start a fire. Ugh. So even though these materials are really wet, we can start a fire. It is possible with this knife. Alright. Though this knife isn't meant for it, we're going to just straight chop on this thing, test its edge retention, because this is pretty hard wood. Alright, as you can see, it chopped not very well, but again, this knife isn't meant for chopping. This is a knife meant for carving, finer work, or just like a general bushcraft knife. That's meant to be paired up with a larger knife or an axe, but that concludes that test. Next thing we're gonna do is just test the biggest shavings we can just carve off of this thing. Okay, so let's get to that. Okay, this thing cuts giant chunks really well. Maybe not quite as well as a straight Scandi, but straight Scandis aren't as controlled when doing finer stuff like feather sticking. So, just in general, it's a pretty good carver. And so far, no hot spots with the handle. It is a bit thin, so people with bigger hands might have a few problems with it. But it's just a small knife. It shouldn't have a giant handle. Okay. Well, guys, we've made it back to the house. We're done testing the top Scandi tracker. Time for the conclusion. With the tasks we did, this knife performed beautifully. You can baton any piece of wood that is below the length of the blade. Like, this thing's a beast with its full tang. Like, it can probably handle a lot of things. In terms of the chopping, the edge retention is great. After the chopping I did, I have no damage, and that was hard wood that I chopped. In terms of just straight carving like this way, and with the chest pulls, this knife, it's not quite as good as a true Scandi, but I did feel a lot more control, and it was easy to carve with. The handle ergonomics are great. If you have bigger hands, it might be a little bit more of a problem. The only few cons I have is that it doesn't come with a 90-degree spine, and the sheath, when you put it in and out of the sheath, a bit of the dye does rub off on it. I don't know if you can see that. It's a bit darker around here and right there than it is around there, and that's a minor problem. It doesn't bother me, but some of you, it might bother you. And in terms of the spine, you can just sand it yourself. Okay, would I recommend this knife? Yes. For $90, you get a great sheath and a great knife with micarta, which a lot of people like. And it can do any of your smaller, fine bushcraft carving tasks, notches, anything
you want to do. And it's just great knife for the money. With that out of the way, I'd like to thank you for watching, and this is Little Birdie signing out.